Alright, thank you for tuning back in. Now that you know which one you're working with, be it a bull barrel or bushing-less design, or a bushing-based design, we can go ahead and move on from here. This one we're going to be starting with is the bushing design, like my Dan Wesson Guardian. It is still safe from last time, it has not been reloaded. And again, to know what we're talking about, it's this metal bushing that's part of the moving slide assembly that's going around the barrel. And the barrel is what's sliding on the inside of the bushing, not on the slide by itself, like on the bull barrel design. With that said, one thing to make note of, I'm not sure if you can pick it up very well here on the video, is you have two indentations on the slide itself. You get the main one where your slide stop rests when it's locked back, and about, I'd say, a half an inch behind it, or towards the rear of the gun, you've got this little crescent cut out. That little second cutout is where the front part, or rather the rear part of your slide stop must come through the slide. And we'll show you why that's needed to be found here in just a moment. But make sure you know what you're looking for as far as that small little notch. Okay? Now as far as the breakdown, you can do a couple ways of doing this removal. Either way, you'll notice that the non-full-length guide rod, it's a springed button, or end bushing, however you want to call it, and it's held in place by the actual barrel bushing itself. It's locked onto the underside of it because the front part that you see is actually smaller diameter than the back portion. But being able to press it up and down, you can use your fingers to depress it, or if you want to, you can use this little tool, which is called a bushing wrench, and do it simply. Just take the wrench and push down to take the tension off, and then rotate the bushing, or you can do it by hand. I typically prefer to do it by hand because I don't feel a need to use the wrench. Of course, do whatever's more easy for you. But simply push down the little button there and rotate the bushing. This is under tension, so beware not to just release it all over the place. Just let it up slowly and easily. Take the end stop, set it aside. You've got the spring here. It is attached to the guide rod at the bottom, so that's why it's not coming out readily. Just give it a little yank, and it'll release. The guide rod's stuck in place there. We'll remove that here in a moment. But now that you have the spring assembly out, we'll flip the gun back over, and now we'll move the slide back so that we can get our little crescent cutout lined up with the stop portion of our slide stop. Just pull it back. And there is a small little catch here. Internally, just need to give it a little bit more pressure to push it back, and we're simply just going to line up the crescent from our slide stop with the crescent from the slide, and then push it through. What we're pushing on is this little nub here at the rotational point of our slide stop. Simply push that through, and once you have enough on the other side, just grab it and pull it right out. And this back portion here is what's actually on the inside of our slide, keeping it in place. And that's why we need to line up that little cutout to make room for its top portion. But we'll set the slide stop away now and simply hold the gun upside down. You don't necessarily have to, but you'll see why here in just a moment. And just slide the frame off the back and set aside. Then what we kept it upside down for is for our guide rod. That is our guide rod, and it just kind of lays in there when it's being disassembled, and just keep it retained, I do it upside down. We'll just set it out to the side here. Now to get the barrel out, we need to remove the bushing, so we're going to simply rotate it the other direction and pull it right on out. One thing to note though is if you slide it all the way, it may catch and not want to come out, so you may need to touch it just a little back the way it came to have it slide out beautifully. The reason for that is this little lug you'll see there on the actual bushing itself. There's a channel inside the slide that it's going into, and it needs to make sure it's clear of the slide to come out of the slide itself. Now as far as moving the barrel, make sure that your linkage is down and just give a little upward pressure Come on. There we go. A little upward pressure, and then push it forward and slide it out of the slide. And that's your general breakdown of your 1911 bushing design. And we'll go ahead and put it back together. There's a small thing you need to keep your eye on when you're putting it back together, and I'll show you here in just a second. But simply slide your barrel back in, make sure it locks back in place. Pull your linkage back up just to get it out of the way. Follow that with your bushing. And again, the lug is going down through your opening there. At least it's supposed to. There we go. And once you have it in, just rotate it back around to where you first had it. So now it's locked in place. The barrel's not going to go anywhere. And now we go ahead and take our guide rod, and notice that it is cut out in a crescent form. That's because it goes against the barrel. And just lay it in. We don't really need to do any lineup. That'll take care of itself here when we put the spring back in. We just need to put it in, and at this point I'll go ahead and bring the linkage back up. I'll have to manipulate it again anyways, but I always hope it doesn't move. But now we just simply line up our cut grooves of our frame and our slide, and just put them together. And bring it together. You'll meet the first stop here. Just give it a little bit of pressure and it'll click past. From here, all you're trying to do is line up the holes on each side of the frame with the linkage that we just pulled back up into place. And with it back in place, flip it back over, take our slide stop and put it through just part way. What some people tend to do is just let it bottom out against the frame, and then they'll slide it and rotate it around, which will give a nice little groove on your frame coating, or start to mar the actual finish if it's a stainless gun. So what I do is just keep it away from the frame, and once it's right below our little indentation point of our tube, I'll push it tight, and then pushing in and up at the same time, I'll just pop it into place. And it's not all the way through because we're not lined up our little notch here. As you can see, rotating it back around, our rotation point's not all the way through from our slide stop. So now that we have this here, we're going to go ahead and once again turn it back upside down. Actually, that's not necessary. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. We're simply just pushing the slide back until we have it lined up and snaps in. You can see it's all the way through now. So we'll go ahead and push the slide back to its full length. And I'm sure you can hear it. That's our guide rod in there. And just having it on its back like this, it'll keep the guide rod pointed right up and down. And before we put the spring back in, I want you to be aware of one little aspect of the spring itself. It has two different ends. One end is round to be a flat bottom. One end is wound to be an open. The rounded end that's flat is going against the guide rod. The open end is going to be going against our little topper here. Just so you're aware. So go ahead and take it as such, and take the flat end and just drop it down in there and just give it a push. And it's just going to get caught on the guide rod again. We just take our topper and put them over there, and just push them back down into the channel, and then rotate our bushing back in place. That's all there is to it. Perfectly reassembled and ready to go. That is our reassembly after being disassembled of our bushing based 1911.